Good morning. My name is William Benson. I'm the Chief Executive of Tunbridge Wells Borough Council, and I'd like to welcome you to this call to provide help and advice and guidance for local businesses. We've done a number of these. We started off doing them physically, then we moved to virtually. This is a blended one today, and I've got in the room with me, I've got our local MP, Greg Clark. I've also got Ross Feeney from the local business improvement district that covers Royal Tunbridge Wells. I've also got Hilary Smith from our economic development department, and I'm also joined on the line by Alison, who is from the Federation of Small Businesses, and Tudor from the Kent Invicta Chamber of Commerce. And also on the line we have Gary Stevenson and Tracy Beattie, who from our environmental health department, because we've had a number of questions about enforcement and premises and sort of guidelines and the like. And we've also got Terry Hughes, who's from our community safety unit. So what I'll do in a second is I'll invite Greg, Ross, Alison and Tudor just to say a few words. But before they do, I'll just say a few words about what the Borough Council's up to. So the first thing to say is that we exist within a sort of framework of sort of national and kind of regional competencies. So things such as business rates, that's very much a national tax, and then kind of locally things like highways are managed by Kent County Council. But we are in constant contact with both Kent County Council and also through Greg with government to try and push the points that you've been raising consistently since March. So I just thought I'd list some of the things that we've been up to from our perspective. We've delivered all of the reliefs that have been issued by government, including £27 million worth of business rate grants and another 1.3 million discretionary grants. We've also been providing advice both to businesses on environmental health and sort of safety issues, but also to other businesses, and it's been really fantastic working with the Kent Invicta Chamber and the FSB, and I think we're also very, very lucky in that we have a local business improvement district, which means we have some resources and capacity to try and respond locally, and I think they've done a fantastic job. We're also trying to do what we can to bring people back into the town. So we're one of the first councils to be reopening our theatre, and that will be opening later this month, and so far bookings are looking pretty good. And also we'll be running the ice rink again. And I thought I'd also just mention a quick word about highways. I know there are one or two questions to come about this later on, but back in May, the government announced some funding to try and improve social distancing on the high streets. And we've been working with Kent County Council to try and give effect to that. I have to say, I think things could have been done better. I think that we were working at pace. There were very tight deadlines to get the schemes in, and what we're trying to do, particularly on the high street, is to talk to local businesses to understand what they think is good and bad. And we did a sort of a walk around a couple of weeks ago, and we've sort of delivered some feedback, which we'll also push out via our regular newsletter. So I won't say any more than that until we get to questions. So I'll now hand over to Greg and ask him to say a few words.
Thank you, William, and good morning, folks, and thanks for coming on the line. I just wanted to first of all say thank you for taking the time, both in this session and in previous ones. There's kind of two aspects to it. One is a Q&A and obviously trying to provide answers to your questions, but the other is to hear from you what's on your minds, what needs to be done differently, and that's been incredibly useful during both the previous times we've had this session and the individual conversations and email exchanges I've had with businesses in and around the town. You might remember right at the beginning, it seems a long time ago now, but the furlough scheme, the proposal for the job retention scheme, came out of the very initial conversations that we had in this forum. So I'm very grateful for any kind of point have to raise. One such thing is the curfew, the 10 p.m. curfew for hospitality businesses. Again, quite a few of you have been in touch pointing out the obvious flaws in this scheme. I raised it in the House of Commons yesterday. Some of you might have seen. I do think it is far too restrictive to try to compress business into a short number of hours and then see, as we have seen, everyone be kicked out and being more dangerously infectious, gathered together in the high street and waiting for taxis and all the rest of it. So things like that. Your feedback is very helpful in helping change policy. And perhaps just before we go to questions, just to say a thank you to William and his officers and team in the council. Throughout the pandemic, William and I were having daily calls, 8 o'clock every morning, to compare notes and make sure that we could act on things that were proving impossible locally and needed some action nationally. And it's very difficult to make decisions under uncertainty and everything changing around. But I know that the whole team have worked flat out from the beginning of the pandemic to try to manage a very difficult situation locally as best they can.
Super, thanks Greg, and thanks very much for all the help and assistance you've rendered. Ross, over to you.
Thank you, William. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. I just wanted to start by recognising the hard work and commitment from businesses across the town centre and the fortitude and resilience that you've all shown against the onslaughts of different challenges of the last 6 months in terms of furlough, lockdowns, reopenings, compressed hours and so on. It's a challenging time. I think we all recognise that, and our role as the Business Improvement District for the town centre is to be here on your behalf to provide business advice and support where it's needed, to provide supplies of masks and posters and any other collateral that you may need to support the safe reopening and continued operation of your premises, and marketing initiatives to encourage people to shop inline or online and to provide and organise where we can safely events to increase footfall and dwell time across the town centre. So we recognise it's a very challenging time and we are here to provide as much advice and guidance and support as we possibly can.
Super, thanks very much indeed, Ross. Alison, do you want to say a few words? Alison from the FSB.
Good morning, William. Thank you. Yes, so Federation of Small Businesses, we're continuing to represent our members and small businesses as a whole at national level with government and the Chancellor, and also locally in events such as this. So thank you for the invitation. Most recently, we've submitted, and I'm sure Greg will come across your desk shortly, our comments and our submissions about on business rates, and part of the fundamental reviews and all of our suggestions and recommendations on that, which I know is always a key issue and challenge for so many small businesses. We will also really be pushing for additional discretionary grants, in particular for those sectors that are really struggling. We really appreciate the initial ones that were launched and distributed sort of 6 months ago, but those businesses still need to get through the winter period and the next 6 months of different trading hours and different situations. So we're going to be asking government, Greg, for additional discretionary grants as well. Thank you.
Perfect, thanks Alison. And last but not least, Tudor.
Good morning. Thank you very much indeed, William. Yes, my name is Tudor Price. I'm the Deputy Chief Exec of the Kent and Victor Chamber of Commerce. And like Alison, the FSB, we're representing our members, but also the wider business community for Kent and Medway, and doing all we can to try and lobby for the best interests of those businesses that we are working with. We also run the COVID-19 Business Support Helpline, which was put in place back in March and has been part funded by the local authorities and Kent County Council. So we've been continuing to support businesses in that regard, and we'll continue to do so up until December at the moment. But thank you very much for inviting me to join you this morning.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, one and all. So just to tell you how things are going to go, I'm afraid everyone's on mute because we've got a large number of people on the line, and experience shows it just gets a bit chaotic if everyone talks at once. If you want to ask a question, we've had a number emailed to us already. There are two ways in which you can do that. You can either email businesscovid19, that's all one word, no hyphens, at tunbridgewells.gov.uk, or you can text in questions, and then the number for text messages is 07881 854 235. This whole session will be recorded and available after the event, and we will also make sure that any questions we don't get round to answering, we'll answer them, and we'll send out a special kind of bulletin afterwards. So if you haven't subscribed to our business bulletin, I'd really recommend you do, and again, you can do that via that same email address. So let's kick straight off into questions. And I'm going to start off with by asking Gary and Tracy some questions about just how people, about how local businesses, I think particularly hospitality businesses and shops by the looks of things, how that they should be managing the various guidelines that have been introduced. So can I start off just by asking you to explain the respective roles of the police, environmental health, Public Health England and the Health and Safety Executive?
Thank you, William. Generally, the coronavirus regulations fall to local authorities, that's the borough and county, and the police to enforce. EHOs work at a district level, and you have trading standards and the Director of Public Health at the county level. The HSE enforce where they are the enforcing authority. So this is generally the manufacturers, schools, care sector, the NHS. And I believe that the HSE have been key or instrumental in writing a lot of the guidance documents with the government. So broadly, the councils enforce regulations relating to coronavirus for businesses, and the police enforce for individuals. There are some overlaps where the government have kindly provided enforcement powers for some of those coronavirus regs to both or all of the agencies involved. And we are working with the police and the county to work on consistency across the county so that we don't overlap unnecessarily. We are working with the HSE on the spot check project that they are initiating, and basically we provide business sector details and they will contact the business and advise. And should there be any concerns remaining from that initial contact, the information and the details of the business are sent back to us. We continue to do our food inspections to our highest risk businesses, and we undertake spot checks for COVID compliance when we do those. Thank you.
All right. So can I follow that up, Tracy? So a couple of people have asked how punitive and how kind of stringent will the enforcement be? So I think people are saying, you know, what if they've done everything they can to make their premises COVID compliant, but for some reason either they've got confused on the rules or someone, you know, a customer has kind of breached the rules. Well, can you just explain what the process would be? And whether, you know, you wouldn't be arbitrarily shutting people down, would you?
Right, William, we will continue to follow our normal enforcement process, which the police have kindly tagged as the 4 E's, which is engage, educate, encourage, and then enforce. So this is no different to how we implement food hygiene regulations or health and safety legislation. We would always try and engage with somebody to discuss what the issues are, explain how we think that they're maybe not complying with the rules, and then encourage them to change whatever it is to comply with the current guidance. And we appreciate that the guidance is subject to change. We always signpost to the government guidance in the first instance, and we are open to having discussions about how that relates to individual premises. I hope that sort of gives some flavour of our approach.
That's great, Tracy. And if someone, as part of, you know, what the first E, if someone wanted some advice, would it be possible to talk to someone, or, you know, if they email business COVID-19, would someone be able to answer questions?
Yeah, I think that would be passed on through to us. We do sort of deal with contacts from businesses. We don't just deal with complaints from the public, and we encourage it, to be perfectly honest, because we get a wide range of queries from how you can implement a whippet racing club to I don't know, how do you comply with guidelines in a retail outlet? So it's varied. Lots of varied queries come through to us.
Sounds like a television series there, a day in the life of an environmental health officer.
I think it probably
so
would
I've got a
be.
few more questions on that, but what I'll do, I think, just to kind of pass things around a bit, I'll move on to perhaps a few questions about support for businesses. So Greg, if there were to be a lockdown locally, and I should say that at the moment the numbers here are very much lower than both, the national average, and certainly the levels at which any intervention would take place. But if we were to go into a lockdown, what financial support would there be for us?
Well, first of all, William, you're right about the numbers being very low here, but they're not zero. So looking at the last day's figures, I think there were 5 cases in Tunbridge Wells. There was a period when it was mostly zero most days, but now it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 most days. So it does sort of reinforce that there is a purpose to all this, and of all the pain that it's causing, it's not that it's completely absent here. So obviously there are some places that are in much stricter lockdown. There are no particular measures that have been introduced, like the equivalent of the furloughing scheme changing its rules for those places. But there's obviously, not least from the MPs for those places, some pressure on them to introduce them. I heard the Middlesbrough South MP this morning before we came out talking about if there's a lockdown that persists in particular geographical places, there's a case for there being extra support for that. So I think that argument is going to be playing out over the next few weeks. I hope we will need it here, but obviously if we were in that position, I would make the case for support to be available locally.
Great. And if perhaps I could ask Greg and Tudor and Alison, if you want to come in on this as well. Quite a few questions we're getting about business rates, and as I said earlier, just to get my defence in first, it's very much a national tax, and for every even though our name's on the bill and we collect it, for every £1 we collect, 4p stays locally, and the rest goes to the Treasury. So clearly we've had the number of businesses being made exempt, and we've also had the grant scheme. But looking beyond the end of the year, if we're going to be in this for 6 months, which takes us beyond the end of March. And I know Greg's not in the government, so it's not directly responsible. But Greg, perhaps Greg first, and then I'll invite Tudor and Alison to come in. Do you think there's any likelihood of that being extended, and is that something you're willing to campaign on?
Well, certainly yes to campaign on it. I think obviously there has been some recognition, and hence the exemptions and the cancellation of business rates for some categories. So there's a recognition of that, and there has been a kind of move to extend some of these schemes. For example, the VAT holiday in another area. So I think that's a reasonable request if it does persist. But one of the features of COVID is that it's accelerated, it seems to me, a lot of things that were happening anyway and should accelerate policy responses. And business rates, it seems to me, for some time now have been looking like an anachronism and dated. The idea that we tax more, which is to say penalise people for operating physical premises in high streets, when actually that makes a huge contribution to the life of towns, cities and villages, seems to be opposite of what we need to do. And so I hope that actually this will crystallise a major reform, that we have a different approach. We don't have business rates in the same way. We certainly don't have in effect a kind of cross subsidy from physical premises to places that don't pay much business rates, but are taking business away from high streets.
If I can join on that, yes.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so thank you, Greg. I'm glad that you've sort of you're very aware of that. You know that FSB's been on the government's case for a long time about a fundamental review of the business rate system. Absolutely for those reasons. Equally for those businesses that trade online, as you said, that haven't got that physical bricks and mortar presence. Something else that I know we put into our business rate submission recently is about the data collection, which does, I suppose, also relate to the local councils, William, in that some businesses who've had small business rate relief for some time, they should have been getting some of these discretionary grants and this financial support throughout COVID, but it might be that that data's not there. So it's a really fiddly problem, and that there's no doubt about that, but we really do believe that there's absolutely need for fundamental review, and sooner rather than later.
Great, so this has got people very excited. I'll invite Tudor to come in and then Ross as well, but just to say you're answering another couple of questions, all of you that have come in, which is precisely about that. It's about the fact that business rates, because it relates to physical premises, is disproportionately penalising the the high street as distinct from those who trade online. So Tudor, do you want to add anything on that?
Yes, thank you very much. I would echo Alison's point there around the business rates methodology as it stands at the moment is no longer relevant to the way in which the market operates. Greg highlighted the fact that changes are being accelerated as a result of this pandemic, and I think the move from sort of bricks and mortar onto online has obviously been quite a marked change, and therefore the rate system that works at the moment, it was rather in place at the moment, just doesn't work. So yes, that needs to change, and as Alison said, sooner rather than later. But also, I think recognising that those changes are taking place, that people's habits are shifting, and businesses that we're talking to, we are sort of encouraging them to take the long view. Things will change, and therefore they need to make adaptations rather to their own business. One of the things that the helpline does is work with businesses, put them in touch with advisors and groups of other businesses to help them sort of look at a recovery action plan, certainly sort of looking at the next 6 to 9 months as to how they can navigate their way through the changes that they're being faced with. And of course, these are external changes. They're not ones that they have sort of asked for or volunteered for. They have obviously been forced upon them, and that's recognised. But it doesn't change the landscape. What they face still needs to be resolved. So it's about working with them to try and help them restructure their business, look at where their markets are, pivot, redirect, and make some of those difficult choices that have to be made as things move forward. Now, there is financial support available in the form of the extension to the bounce back loans. Of course, there are changes now to the furlough scheme, which has been sort of changed into the employment retention scheme. And details again can all be sort of sourced through the helpline. Just echoing the sort of local lockdown scenario, one of the things that has been made available is this grant is about £1,500 in the event of a local lockdown. But that will be to businesses that are forced to close, not those that are already suffering. So that's a sort of a distinct difference there that needs to be taken on board. The challenge really is for many businesses is recognising where they are and that they have little control over some of these external effects. And we found a lot of the time on the helpline is actually counselling and supporting businesses to go through that emotional and personal change, because there are businesses that are thriving at the moment in the current climate, and there are businesses that are watching their life's work go down the pan. And it's a very tough thing to try and get on board with. But as ever, businesses will adapt and move forward. And as I said at the beginning of my introduction, the helpline is here to support businesses free of charge up until certainly Christmas and probably beyond. But there is support. It's limited and it is very nuanced, and criteria is in place. But there is always plenty of people around to try and support you sort of with advice and information as things move forward.
Thanks very much, and certainly the feedback we've had on that advice line has been very positive, and what we'll do is we'll put the details out with the bulletin that follows this briefing if anyone wants the numbers or contact details. So Ross, do you want to come in on the issue of business rates?
Yes, thank you. I mean, I would agree with everything that's already been said around the rates themselves being a punitive charge on bricks and mortar businesses. We've seen over the last 6 months there's been a real drive to encourage people not to come into town centres and to shop online, because it's been seen as the safer thing to do, and that's understandable. But we now need to move that message back and say, look, you need to shop in line, not online, because our businesses, they need your support to survive. And we've got a big marketing campaign that will be running right the way through October, November and December, encouraging people to safely come back into the town centre, so that we don't lose any more businesses. We've seen a couple already that I can think of that have closed their bricks and mortar business and are now trading solely online. And we recognise that at the moment the weather is on the turn. You've got to queue up. It's going to take longer to do a bit of shopping. You've got to wear a face mask. You have to hand sanitize every shop you go into. But I would encourage you to continue to encourage your customers to come in and to shop locally, to keep the town centre vibrant. And I would say to those businesses that are struggling that we can provide help and guidance on the layout of your stores, the dressing of your windows, and any safety signs and guidance that you need to make the appearance of your premises COVID safe. Because if you look like you know what you're doing and you're putting the welfare of your customers first, then they will have the confidence to come into your premises, and that's absolutely vital as we move into this next period of the COVID pandemic.
And I think that's a really important point, Ross, that when I think our experience was that those shops and sort of premises that did more to make themselves secure and give the appearance that they were secure did better than those that didn't. And certainly one of the things we've done, I think some businesses were very successful at, was adapting to different models of delivery. So if there is to be any form of lockdown, we've changed and sort of flexed a lot of our kind of rules and regulations to allow people to move to either takeaway or delivery models of operation. And I'm sure that if you speak to either us or Ross or the Kent Invicta helpline, we can give advice on that based on those that did it successfully during the last lockdown.
Okay. William, can I just add to that, if I may, just a couple of examples of where things have worked well in terms of sort of bricks and mortar and online. So click and collect has been incredibly popular. It's had a huge impact, and you can sort of time and schedule your customers coming in, and that sort of helps manage that queue situation. But then also, if you are providing an online service, and most businesses I'm sure will have a website or Facebook page, which is absolutely essential these days. If you are doing a delivery service, then if there's any returns, which is quite commonplace with e-commerce, the returns get made back to the shop, and that brings people back into your premises, and therefore helps with that footfall and maybe some upselling as well.
Super, thanks, Tudor. Weirdly, now I'm going to ask myself some questions. So the first question is around the high streets in Royal Tunbridge Wells, and I'm sure those that live or work or shop in town will have seen that it's been changed to a one-way method of operation, and there are kind of barriers along the side, on the right-hand side as you kind of walk down the hill. So as I think I said in my introduction, the government made some money available for schemes, and the intention was both to enable people to feel safer, enabling them to socially distance, and also to enable businesses to serve more customers. And as often in Tunbridge Wells, opinions are strongly held, and we've had people both saying great, thanks very much, and we've had businesses contacting us out of the blue saying that they've been doubling the number of covers they've been able to manage, or how good it is. We've had those telling us it's absolutely dreadful. So we spent a day walking the kind of length and breadth of the high street, talking to both shoppers and also talking to traders. And a majority of people thought it was a good idea, but there were also some concerns, and those concerns were number one, about the deliveries, people's ability to, delivery lorries blocking the street or where they could go, the look and feel of the scheme, which I have to say I think looks pretty dreadful, the lack of kind of notice and communication, and I think a kind of desire, if possible, to have more parking, although we haven't taken out any parking as part of it. There were also positive things. People said that, it feels, quieter, less traffic, it's, more pleasant, and some of the businesses appreciated the ability to put tables and chairs outside. So in response to all of that, what we're now looking at is whether we could switch away from the kind of, horrible red and white plastic barriers towards something more Tunbridge Wells. And if you're near a computer, if you Google the word parklets, Parklets, you'll get an idea of what I mean. We'll put more details in the kind of newsletter that goes around, but I think the intent would be to sort of see if we put some of these kind of nicer barriers where people, with seats and plants and, chairs and tables, see what people think of that, and then, if that seems to be well received, to look at extending it. And I've had another question, so I'll just answer two at the same time, where someone's asked about Camden Road, and I think our intent initially was to do a similar thing in Camden Road, but I think what we would rather do is get it right in the high streets before sort of hurtling headlong into doing something elsewhere. So I think we're going to test, what we can make, how we can make it look great and, work for traders and visitors alike. And then if that's well received, then we'll look at doing something similar on Camden Road. Okay, so there's a couple for me. Tracy and Gary, you've been quiet for a while, so I'll head back to you if that's all right. And can I just give you a few questions around how businesses can actually enforce compliance on the part of people visiting? So someone's asked that there's this rule of 6, and if a family of 12 but 2 tables and don't tell us or don't tell them, how would they ensure they're not breaching the rules?
Good question. And I think it's very difficult for businesses, but I would start with your risk assessment and put in place measures that take into account the current guidance that apply to your businesses. So look at things like the booking conditions and the information that's on the websites, sort of perhaps clarify with the clients or the customers at booking and warn them of the measures that you have in place to prevent mingling between customers at the premises. You'd be looking at the design and layout for 2 meters or 1 meter plus as much as possible. And of course, now businesses have to have QR codes and contact information of customers. So ultimately, you as the business do have the ultimate authority to refuse to have somebody on your premises if they are not complying with your risk assessment. So I think that in terms of enforcement, we would take all those measures that you put in place into account if we did get complaints.
And Tracy, would the same thing go for masks? If people aren't wearing masks when they go in, it's the same thing, is that they can refuse to serve them or ask them to leave?
Yes, I think it sort of goes back to that, the four E's, which, it's engage, explain, and then ultimately you do have that right to say, I'm sorry, you're putting me at risk, or you're putting other customers at risk in this situation by taking this stance.
And what if it's a member of staff? Someone's asked if it's a member of staff that's refusing to wear a mask. Presumably that's an employment matter.
Well, of course, you've got, with face coverings, you do have certain exemptions. So it's a slightly more tricky situation, and nothing is sort of black and white, is it? But so then they could have one of the exemptions, medical reasons or whatever. But ultimately, it's no different to any other employment issue, sort of wearing uniform or sort of other sort of rules that you sort of have in place for staff members.
Great. And just finally on this, someone's asked, you know, that's all well and good, but if push comes to shove, hopefully not literally, you know, if people are refusing to comply, refusing to leave, what support is available, or, you know, how should they challenge people? I think we've not had a lot of this kind of locally, but nationally there have been some pretty, you know, grim cases of people, you know, point blank refusing to comply and then getting kind of very angry and aggressive when asked to. So what could, you know, a trader do, you know, a restaurant, a shop, you know, who can they call if someone's absolutely refusing to leave and comply?
Well, this is ultimately a police matter, but there is the sort of within Tunbridge Wells, you've got the partnership, and you've got the support of that network. So it does come down to a police enforcement matter ultimately.
All right. So I know Terry's on the line, and someone's asked specifically about Shop Safe Radio. So could you say something about that, please, Terry?
Yes, certainly, William. Yeah, I think what Tracy was saying there is very important about the engaging and the explaining and the encouraging, and telling the customers really that, you know, we really want your business. If they're not wearing a mask without reason, without good reason, or a person is deliberately not following social distancing guidelines, then once you've explained the shop's policy and politely asked them to follow the guidelines, or politely asked them to leave if necessary, several times if need be, if that hasn't worked, then request police attendance, either through the Safe Town Partnership radio system, who will get in touch with our camera operators. We have a full, we've got full thingy of camera operators at this time, and they will put it through to the town centre officers. And if there's a town centre officer available, then they will come to your assistance if they're there. If they're not, then it will be put through to the police's force control system. If you're not a member of the Safe Town Partnership, then please call 101. Similarly, if there are threats made, or if a person refuses to leave, or if it becomes a public order issue where there's potential for harm to people or property, then again, call 999, in fact, if that was the case. Thank you.
And Terry, if someone isn't a member of the Shop Safe Radio and they decide actually now they'd like to be, how would they go about doing that?
I think for the purpose of this call, they can either call the 526121 for the switchboard for the council and ask for the Safe Town Partnership, and Ros Heaton will be around quick as a flash to explain the terms and conditions, or use the business COVID-19 email address, and that also will reach her.
Great, thanks very much, Terry. So just to kind of demonstrate how live this is, we've had a sort of follow-up question on the high street, asking around the direction, why the decision was made for it to go south-north rather than north-south. And I think our initial thought was it should run north-south, you know, down the hill, because that's, you know, the way that traffic tends to flow. Kent County Council said that their preference was to have it the opposite direction, and I'm going to ask Hilary if she could say something about why that decision was made.
Yeah, so there were discussions between Kent County Council and ourselves about the direction of flow, so both were considered. The decision to run northbound was partly about slightly trying to slow down the traffic going one way, particularly since part of the aim of the scheme is to make the environment more pleasant for shoppers and pedestrians, to widen the pavement, and as William said, to allow people to eat and drink outside. So the traffic is likely to be moving a bit more slowly northbound up the hill. Also it related to issues about how the junction works at the bottom of the high street onto the A26 as well.
Interestingly, when because initially I thought, what have they done? It's idiotic, but actually when we went and spoke to businesses, the views were, I mean, you were down there, weren't you, Ross? Yeah. There weren't particularly strong views, were there? No,
there wasn't actually. There was a number of retailers commented positively that having the direction of travel the way it had been organised, it prevented the road being used as a bit of a rat run, and the sentiment was that traffic was moving slowly rather than at speed, which meant it was a more pleasant experience to be a pedestrian on the road. So it hasn't been a significant, or hasn't had a significant impact on as many businesses as perhaps so it was suggested it might have.
Great. Can I stay with you, Ross, and just ask what plans the bid? So the bid stands for Business Improvement District, and it's an entity that basically takes a small additional precept from businesses that then goes into a pot. It can't replace any funding that the council's doing stuff on. It has to be for new stuff. And it's called Royal Tunbridge Wells Together. So can you just explain what plans you've got for Christmas to support the businesses?
Yes, absolutely. So Christmas is obviously a very important time for businesses in a variety of different sectors, but predominantly in retail. So the first thing we're doing is we're running a marketing campaign right the way through the next 3-month period. Use the phrase I've used a couple of times already, in line, not online. So encouraging people to come into the town centre and to do their shopping in person rather than doing it over the internet. In terms of Christmas itself, we're going to be running a variety of marketing campaigns, both in print media and on online and social media, right the way through November and December, to encourage people to come into the town centre. We are also going to be running a series of competitions, one of which will be to win a £500 cash prize, and we're offering that as part of our initiative or our contribution to the Mayor's toy appeal to support sort of disadvantaged children across the borough. To enter that competition, to win £500, people will have to come into the town, buy a gift or buy a toy with the value of over £10, and then go to one of the drop-off points that we'll be announcing, and with evidence that they've spent that money in the town centre. If they do that, then they'll be entered into the draw to win that £500 prize. So that's one of the things we're doing. We're also going to be having an online gift guide. We had a printed gift guide last year. This year we're going to be putting it online just to make it more accessible. It'll be something that you'll be able to download and to view online. Businesses right across the town centre will be invited to sort of be part of that, and put in sort of nominate gifts that they want to promote. We're also working with the council this year on managing the Christmas lights, so there'll be a brand new Christmas light scheme going in with hopefully some new displays which will be very, very positive and welcoming. And we're looking at whether we can do some form of light switch on event, whether that's sort of something that happens in person or whether it has to be an online sort of virtual event, as it were. So there's quite a lot we've got going on in terms of marketing and promotion. We also have our savings advice service that operates, that helps businesses with their overheads and their general costs. And although it's not strictly Christmas, we will be running 7 days of events and activities in the town centre in the October half term, which is the end of October, called the High Street Playground. So we're going to have jugglers, stilt walkers, fire eaters, and so on, all doing different types of events each day to encourage people to come into the town centre during that period.
Thanks very much, Ross. And as I said, the ice rink will be up and running. It'll have reduced capacity, but it'll be the sort of same size as before. And we're also, whilst the producers have decided they can't carry on with the pantomime, there is going to be a kind of cheaper, lower key pantomime, and cheaper for you, or not sort of a cheap product. And there's one ticket price for children and adults alike, and that's selling pretty well. So hopefully that will help bring people into town. So Greg, one of the things that's come up repeatedly, I think, in every one of these calls has been about the support for small company directors that take their income as dividends. And I know you've been pressing this on our behalf. Is there any kind of reason for people to be hopeful, or is this a sector that's going to carry on struggling?
It has been a struggle, and there'll be lots of people on the call that I've been in touch with, and I completely recognise how it must seem particularly unfair to be going through the struggles that you're having and not get the support that the employed people have had, self-employed people who've been sole traders. I've spoken to the Chancellor about this, had a meeting with him about it, and various of my colleagues have raised it. The reason why people who are self-employed but are paid through dividends rather than through being employed through PAYE or sole traders through the tax return is this: that the Treasury say that they can't distinguish between people who are in effect investors, owners of a company who are investors taking dividends out that way, or managers. They can't distinguish between the two. And given that there isn't support for investors who are losing out, it's meant to be an employment scheme, and that inability to distinguish between the two, they say, makes it impossible to provide a scheme in which people who follow the advice of lots of accounting firms that advise people to kind of set up limited companies and pay themselves dividends rather than take money directly, they fall outside it. I can't honestly say that I've heard anything that suggests that's going to change. They've clearly thought about it, they've clearly repeatedly reasserted the position. But I do recognise that that's causing particular problems for people who, for perfectly legitimate reasons, have chosen to structure their businesses in that way.
Thanks very much. I don't know whether anyone else wants to come in. I know it's something that both sort of FSB and the Chamber have been lobbying on. Do you want to say anything, Alison or Tudor?
Yeah, absolutely. I know that our national chairman has brought this up as well, Greg, with the Chancellor. I would say that is just so disappointing, and that surely there is some sort of a solution that can solve this problem. It seems incredibly unfair, and I really hope I'll sort of look into it a bit further myself. But in terms of what we've said on a national basis to government, but we need some sort of emergency relief package for these groups who have paid their taxes. They really do deserve the help too.
Yeah, again, support Alison's comments there, really, and we're very much joined up on this one. One thing I would say is that where we are now in terms of the sort of support measures and the status of the economy, the sort of notion of trying to provide interventions from a national level are becoming more and more complex and more problematic, and therefore, as Alison alluded to earlier, we and the FSB are obviously lobbying for more local discretionary funds to be made available, because the complexity of just handling vast numbers of claims is in itself problematic and costly, but also the nuances and the subtle differences there are between situations like this, where we have indistinguishable between an investor and a director who's drawing a dividend instead of a salary. They are very hard to do, and you do need to sort of have a bit of local knowledge and some local intelligence to be able to really wade through the differences there and to avoid some of the fraudulent claims, which will be undoubtedly sort of part of that process. So I think trying to solve things nationally is not really the way forward. I think localism is definitely the way to go in terms of the interventions, and we would sort of encourage the ministers involved to sort of look at that more seriously as we move forward.
A man after my own heart. Thanks, Tudor. I can just stay with you, Tudor and Alison, just to pick up another couple of questions. We're running out of time, so I might be grouping some together now. One question is, what business support is available to help me restructure my business to survive the crisis and make it more sustainable in the long run? So I'm sure we've already mentioned the advice line, but maybe you'd like to reply to that. And also a much more specific one, which is a question from a business in the beauty industry, beauty services industry, saying that they're a close contact service, and whilst they've got clients coming back, they're limited in how many clients they can see in a day because of extra cleaning and ventilation between each client, and there's costs of PPE. So is there any help that can be provided to them over the winter? So I'll let perhaps I'll go Tudor and Alison, and then if anyone else wants to come in, just let me know.
Certainly. I think on the 2 points there, so first of all, with the sort of the beauty business, I think without being lacking compassion here, I think this is the reality that this business faces now, and if anyone does business plans, they'll be familiar with the sort of pestle model, where you look at the political, environmental and things that are going on around you in your marketplace. And this, I alluded to this earlier, the frustration that people feel because these changes have been sort of imposed upon them. They're not something that they feel has sort of happened naturally. So it's understandable that there's frustrations, but it's rather like restaurants. If the number of covers are going to be reduced because you just can't see that number of people, then necessarily you have to either change direction on your business or accept that there's going to be lower income and then adjust your cost base accordingly. So it is very frustrating, but I think the business needs to sort of stop looking for that sort of financial intervention to try and sort of shore them up and actually thinking, okay, where else can we go with this now? And that's really what the helpline does. This is where the advisors and the groups that we're working with try and encourage people to sort of try and look at that alternative thinking. Yes, people will continue to lobby, as with FSB and others, to try and provide for financial support, but it has to be recognised that this, you only get out of this problem on your own. On the other matter, there are interventions coming down the line. So we are working with the Local Enterprise Partnership, local authorities and sort of the Department for Business to help design and guide some of the future interventions. And we're expecting a number of different programs to launch in late autumn, early new year, which will provide, some of them will be grant based. So they'll be around environmental grant programs. There is expansion grants available as well. There is also some business advice programs that will encourage businesses to come together and work collectively to solve issues that they're facing at this time. So further support is coming through. It's being designed and implemented over the next 3 to 4 months. And if you need more details on that, again, I'd refer back to the helpline, details of which will be circulated at the end.
All right, Alison, do you want to add anything?
Yes, thank you. So with the beauty industry in particular, we know they were really hard hit, and they're already one of the most sort of hygienic and safety compliant sectors, if you can look at it that way. So we will absolutely be pushing for additional discretionary grants, as I mentioned, to help these real struggling sectors in retail, hospitality, leisure, beauty industry, those kind of companies, to help them get through the next 6 months. So we will do our utmost to push through on that. On a positive note, I think actually there's a real wonderful array of support available already for businesses. So not only is there this Kickstart scheme that can absolutely help those firms who might want to merge roles or take on an additional member of staff. There's the Kickstart scheme, there's the leadership programme via the Small Business Charter. That's up and available right now. Anyone can just Google that and find that support and advice. The Locate in Kent are running their Future Forward programme, which is very much that business specific one-to-one coaching to help you restructure and build in business resilience. There's lots of schemes online, the Digital Skills Partnership, for example, part of the South East LEP. There's a vast array of training courses, advice and guidance, lots and lots available. So I think probably in the write-up of this, we can do lots of signposting and links to those kind of things. Alongside that, there's the South East Business Boost, which will be coming in sort of that funding again, which offers business support and advice and guidance as part of that grant and funding. There's financial options like iConstruct, like Tail, like Locase. So as soon as businesses start to look, that support and guidance is there according to your need, and I'm sure more, as Julia was saying, will be coming down the line as well.
Thanks, Alison. I think one of the things is there's almost a bewildering array of schemes.
That's just off the top of my head.
So what I would do is I would very much encourage people to ring the advice line, who will help you kind of unpack what might work for you. And we'll try and put details of some of those things in the newsletter. And just to emphasise as well, I think the Kickstart scheme is potentially very exciting, and we'll put some information in on that as well. Okay, so I'll sort of try and pick up the pace a bit to try and get through as many things as we possibly can. So I'll chuck another one at myself, which is around the hoary issue of parking. And before I kind of say this, if you just allow me to play my tiny violin for a second, which is that the council has ceased to have a government grant whatsoever. We used to sort of 10 years ago get £4.6 million. It's now nothing. So we're essentially a business. We rely very heavily on income, and income provides, from fees and charges, accounts for a larger proportion of what we spend than council tax, government grants, and business rates, and absolutely everything else. And throughout the pandemic, we have been losing about £1 million a month on a £13 million net revenue budget. through a combination of reduced income, planning fees and predominantly parking, but also some of the increased costs. And the government has put in place some schemes to support us, but they only account for just over 70% of those losses. So lots of people have said, what can we do about parking? Will there be initiatives and offers in the run up to Christmas? Can we make it free? Can we have kind of free or cheaper parking on weekends? What we've done with parking is, in the very early days, we let residents park for free in the car parks. We made changes to on-street enforcement to help people adapt to delivery and takeaway mechanisms. We did run, when the town centres reopened, we ran a campaign of reduced price parking, £2. And we are in discussions with the bid about some Christmas promotion, but I'm afraid that's not yet been agreed. We're about to go into the tunnel, aren't we? And so more on that to come. But I'm afraid, I would say that there are over 1,000 free on-street spaces. But I do appreciate that some businesses are saying that with people queuing, it's taking a bit longer, and people, may overstay the hour. But there is plenty of capacity in the multi-storey car parks, and we're trying to do everything we can to make them COVID secure with contactless payments and all the rest of it. And in truth, the cost of car parking makes up a fairly small proportion of people's spend when they're in town, but I don't for a second underestimate the psychological importance of that. So I'm afraid that's as much as I can say on that. And the other thing I was going to mention as well is someone's brought up the cinema site, and I'm afraid it is back on the market. It's in the same way as Afghanistan is sometimes said to be the graveyard of empires. It seems to me that the cinema site is the graveyard of developers. I have to say, Elysian, who were the most recent developers, were working really hard on it. They were talking intensively to our planners. They were spending a lot of money on it. But that they've just no longer able to take it forward. So we're absolutely frustrated and devastated, and every other word you can think of. In terms of the specific question is what are we doing to try and get it redeveloped? We're not going to be able to buy it. It's being marketed for £17 million. Just to put that in context, that would be the entire council tax we get from every household in the borough for 2 years, and that's before we've done a thing with it. So lots of people are saying, can you buy it and make it a park? I'm afraid unless we kind of ran a referendum and everyone said they were happy to have their council tax go up by 300%, that's just not going to be possible. But clearly we're talking to the vendors, and our hope is that there will be someone who buys it with a view to taking it forward. Greg, do you want to say anything on the cinema site, or would you rather?
Well, it's come. I just read about it the same as everyone else,
Yeah.
and it's a big blow. I do think we do need to have a conversation around it. It is a prime site in the centre of town, as is the town hall that we're speaking from. And since you asked me, William, I think the council should now be thinking imaginatively about a solution that develops the cinema site and takes forward improvements to this town hall site.
Great. Okay, super. And probably got time for just a couple more. One question on trading hours. So people saying that because of the reduced numbers of customers in store, they're considering longer opening hours, and might the government consider relaxing Sunday trading hours to spread out the available time for shopping? So is that something you might be able to pick up on our behalf?
Yes, absolutely, William. In fact, I raised this question in the Commons yesterday, saying it does seem a bit crazy to restrict the number of hours that hospitality businesses can close, better to spread people out. And of course, the same applies to Sunday trading, limited for 6 hours. So there was a proposal that the government brought forward in June to temporarily extend Sunday trading hours, but it was dropped because it was clear that it wasn't going to get through Parliament. The opposition were against it, and a number of Conservative MPs were against it, and so they had to retreat. Now, whether there's a case for Christmas shopping, which obviously we hope will involve crowds jostling around in the streets, and at least having that as a temporary period of extension, personally think there's a good case for it. I would have supported the extension that was proposed. So I will take back from this call and this conversation a Christmas specific exemption.
And Ross, in terms of local businesses, I know you were when shops and premises reopened, they were varying their shopping hours, and I think you were trying to get a consistency. Do you think there would be any merit in extending, encouraging all businesses to extend their shopping hours within the town centre? Is that something that we could maybe look at?
Yes, absolutely. We fully support that. I'm happy to do whatever we can to promote it. I think you're right. When the lockdown was eased, a number of retailers, both the national chains and smaller independents, were varying their hours, and some were opening 9 to 5, some were 10 to 4, some were 11 till 3. And so we were in the first case encouraging everyone to have their stores open from 10 till 4, so that there was at least some consistency of hours for people coming into the town centre. I think as time is going on, we need to have a broader discussion about what the trading hours are for the town centre, and certainly we'd be happy to lead on a coordinated approach to making sure as many businesses are open for as much time as is needed, particularly in the next 3 months and the run up to Christmas.
Perfect. All right, so we're just about out of time. I'll answer one very quick one for me, which was a question about whether the potential non-recovery of business rates will have an impact on parish councils. And the answer to that is no. Parish councils, the precept comes from council tax, not business rates. So it won't have an impact on parish councils. And Terry sent me the direct line for the Safe Town Partnership, if anyone's interested in that or wants to explore having a shop safe radio, and that is 01892 554423, but we'll put it in the bulletin. So I'm afraid that's time up and over a little bit, so apologies for that. Thank you very much indeed for all of your questions. Before going, I'll just give each of our participants a chance to add anything if they want to. Greg, is there anything you want to add?
Just a big thank you to everyone on the call. I know it's been tough, and the winter, I'm sure, is going to be tough. These conversations and the ones we have outside are incredibly valuable. Whether it's the furlough scheme, whether it's bounce back loan, whether the new job support scheme. These have all come from proposals that businesses have made, so I'm very grateful for that, and we'll continue to fight your case in Parliament.
Great. Ross?
Thank you. As a business improvement district company, we exist solely to support businesses in the town centre, and I would encourage as many of you as possible to engage with us and to keep those communication channels open. We have a sort of town centre WhatsApp group, which I run through my phone, and we've got about 80 businesses that are linked on that already. It's a great opportunity for businesses to have peer-to-peer conversations and to share ideas, and to also to share messages with me. So if you want to be part of that and you're not already, please just send a text to 07808 646 758, and I'll add you to the WhatsApp group.
Magic. Thanks, Ross. Alison?
Thank you. No, just best wishes to all the local businesses for the next few months. Everyone's welcome to use the advice and guidance which is regularly updated on our website, fsb.org.uk. Thank you.
Great. And Tudor?
Just a pitch for the business helpline, really. It's there. We've got 9 advisors sitting on the other end of the telephone waiting to help you and give you information on all of those grant programmes that Alison and I have mentioned in this call. It's 03333 602 300, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much for today.
So we'll put all of these numbers and any kind of web links on that bulletin that will come out, and we'll also this whole conversation has been recorded, which we'll post on the website later on. So does anybody on the phone want to add anything, or Hilary? No.
Not really. I think just to say also, there's also always lots of information, hopefully useful information for businesses on the Tunbridge Wells Borough Council website as well. And please keep emailing us at businesscovid19@tunbridgewells.gov.uk with any other queries, and we'll try to assist.
Brilliant. Well, thank you all very much for calling in or for listening later. Thanks very much to Greg and Ross and Alison and Tudor. and Hilary and Terry and Gary and Tracy for all of your help in answering those questions. There are a couple we didn't get round to that we'll include again in the bulletin. Thank you very much. Keep doing what you're doing, and good luck. And if there's anything we can do to help, just drop us an email. Thank you very much.